I'm not. I'm not ready at all.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast that improves itself, improves ourselves, and improves the self in general. My name's Ty. I'll be your host, and I'm joined today by my self-centered co-host, Distance. And tonight we are talking about the idea of being selfish. And similar to the last episode, I'm gonna just turn the intro over to you. This is these two episodes that kind of tie together were I'm just gonna say they were your choice. That way, if they go horribly, it's your fault.
Yep, it's my fault if they go horribly. Yeah, I think that selfishness gets a bad rap, and I also think it gets a good rap, and I think it should get an in-between rap.
Do you feel that it gets a good rap? Because I definitely agree that it gets a bad rap. But did you feel that like some people actually overvalue selfishness, or?
No, I think that I think when I say like a good rap, I think that we intuitively tend to be excessively so. At least,
okay.
And even some people that think that they're being very generous in many cases are being selfish. Like,
I still feel like in a lot of those situations, though, the word or the idea of selfishness is still like negative. Even when someone's being selfish and they think, like I think that the idea or the term selfish to them is still like a negative thing. At least in my experience, it has been.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it just kind of goes back to there's just some of the ideas of at least in American culture that there's a period of time where everyone dutifully did jobs to increase prosperity or whatever, and everyone was sort of a workforce to provide products and stuff, and everybody dutifully had children and bought houses because that was how you contributed to society. That was the thought. And there's also a group of people that grew up in a time where many of them went to a place where they all died.
Yeah, you're talking about the war, I assume, right?
Yeah, Omaha Beach, things like that. And it was thought of as being like a sacrifice because it was viewed as defending freedom and defending liberty and altruistic act. And I mean, to be fair, when a lot of the stuff that was happening during World War II, it was a little more than just defending freedom and liberty and all that.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of the idea that it's kind of like the sort of tribal idea that you need to be like giving and sharing with your community and stuff like that. And I think that there's a lot of leftover ideas related to that, where people think that you paint with a broad brush this idea that selfishness is like 100% bad all the time.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and that's the weird thing is this is a newer concept for me, that I'm pretty sure was brought on by you within the past year of us doing this. But thinking of the term selfish and selfish acts as being not necessarily a bad thing, and that was for 31 years of my life. Literally, the term selfish was like a negative term. It's like if someone was being selfish, they were doing something wrong and putting themselves above others. And it was like, well, it's weird because it's like, well, hold on, what necessarily makes that wrong? It's like as an individual living in a world, basically, for lack of it's kind of like foolhardy to make the comparison, but like to look at life as a game, we're basically playing a single player game. It's like it is multiplayer, we're all in this together, but it's like you are kind of the hero of your own story. You are like, you should care more about yourself than than many others. So what is actually wrong with putting yourself first?
Yeah, I think that that maybe I think it's almost like it's almost like overcompensating for like how like our natural state, which is, you know, to be like to survive and, you know, to look out for ourselves. And I think that there was a period of time where that was like very necessary. Because
Okay,
like
yeah.
did you finish reading that or listening or oh crap, hold on, I just dropped something.
Don't do that.
Did you finish like reading / listening to that Sebastian Junger book?
Yeah, Tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I only listened to it, and honestly, like, I feel like it deserves a second listen. I feel like I want to listen to it again. I don't feel like I absorbed as much from it as I wanted to.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things that you see he says in a lot of like cultures is that the thing that people end up getting punished for the most is selfishness or cowardice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that was something that was necessary in those groups to be done. And, you know, maybe it's a bad thing that selfishness can exist in our, you know, modern society, and it's not a huge deal.
Well, also, so, you know, I mean, I do enjoy the semantics here, you know, and so looking up the definition, I do notice one thing that maybe like a point of where this is different. In the definition of selfish, it specifically mentions lacking consideration for others. And then, you know, semicolon, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure, which the second half of that I don't think is necessarily bad. If you are concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure, that is self-interested and self-centered, neither of which I think necessarily are negative. But that first part, though, if you are self-interested or self-centered to the point of where your consideration for others starts to lack, then I think that it can be out of balance. But I think that that's like the point, is I think that both of us believe in an idea of balanced selfishness.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in being conscientious, but not like selfless, like completely for others.
Yeah.
And nobody is, no matter what anybody says. There's no such thing as selfless. Like selfless is not really. Selfless means you don't survive.
Yeah.
In my opinion, or selfless means you're never content.
Well, it's like an on paper extreme, right? Like it's an idea that you can describe, but it's never going to exist in reality. You can't have like someone that's actually selfless. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not really a possible thing, because I mean, you don't survive or thrive that way. But, you know, and I think that a lot of conscientiousness is just the idea of treating people in a way that's correct or like right.
Okay.
Or is
but by correct or right, you basically just kind of mean like, fair or respectful, right? Or like,
yeah, like morally defensible.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's funny because you look at some individuals that are like people pleasing behaviors. Those people are actually intensely selfish.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Because they're acting the way that they are strictly for their own convenience, because they don't want to have to deal with conflict. They don't want to feel anxiety because they're feeling pressure from other people. And it's kind of it's interesting to me. And a lot of the time what happens is the people around them are reasonably content, but those individuals, like the people pleasing type people, are intensely like miserable and often angry.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, pushing all of their interests like aside, and it's just it's crazy and very unhealthy.
We end up you're socially or emotionally spreading yourself so thin at that point. You're not giving yourself what you need as a human.
Yeah, and you won't really be worth much to anybody, because you may not necessarily. You might be pleasing people, but you may not be giving them what's best for them, or like what is the highest benefit for them.
Yeah, there's a big difference between pleasing someone. Like, you can have a conversation where you just tell someone what they want to hear. And they may be pleased by that, but that is not necessarily beneficial to them in any way.
Very true. And I think Tony Robbins said it one time that, I think I might have talked about this in the last episode, that you're not, I think it was Tony Robbins, that if you don't work on yourself, then you can't be any value to anyone else.
Yeah, I feel like we did talk about that last episode. Yeah.
And I think,
which I feel like we knew there was going to be some crossover between the two.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think that the way I see it too is like, if I can understand how to take care of myself in the best way, then I can encourage other people to take care of themselves in the best way. And then they can get something good out of it, and then I can get something good out of it. And then we can both be better suited to serving other people because we've created value in ourselves.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's almost like selfishness with the intent to build myself into someone who can be valuable later.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to get to was, I wonder, and this is kind of like the semantic argument, but I wonder if, is there just like kind of a disagreement with terms, where is selfish as most people define it? Is that the out of balance, and that's why it's looked at as mostly negative? And what we are talking about is basically just self-interested, or like, is there another term that more accurately describes what we are talking about? And in reality, selfish is actually like that trait turned to 11, out of balance, and to the point where it is lacking the consideration for others.
I would say narcissistic would fit the definition of out of balance for that.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, I mean, if you necessarily consider selfishness as being completely like unconcerned or oblivious to other people, then yeah, I mean, I guess if that's what it's considered, then yeah. But I would say that narcissism is probably more accurately out of balance trait.
Gotcha.
And the other thing is there's also, it depends on your culture too, because we have a very individualistic culture in the US that, you take care of yourself and you take responsibility. That's sort of like the idea of like historically what, American culture was founded on.
Yeah.
So I was actually listening to, it was a British reporter was talking to a group of students in China and asking them about, the United States and what they thought. And what they were saying was, well, in the US, their culture is based on the individual.
Yeah.
But in China, like, we think about the bigger picture, the greater good. That's where our culture is. So that's the reason why it's different.
Yeah.
And they're saying it's nothing wrong with America. That just doesn't work for us.
It's just different priorities there. Yeah.
Yeah. And in our culture, like, there's a degree of that which is really encouraged. And it's become more so because it's weird, because I think what I was talking about earlier is like, historically, the idea of doing a job and contributing to an economy is thought of as a duty to contribute to society.
Yeah.
So it's almost like individualism with the intent of being contributing or being altruistic. It's kind of weird, actually, if you think about it.
Well, it's just like, I mean, both exist in both cultures, right? Like in both cultures, there is the individual and the collective. It's just kind of like what you consider first. Yeah.
I mean, for us, it's like personal liberty above everything else.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the collective is still there, and it's still like considered in some decisions. It's just, it seems it's like the self is first.
Right. Yeah. And some Americans, I mean, are very fervent and vehement about individual liberty, that, they should do what it is that's best for them and what they want to do all the time. And it should in some ways almost be regardless of other people. But I'm not saying that everybody should have like a zero fucks attitude you don't care about anything anybody says or whatever. And it's like being an asshole because, you know, you're looking out for you. But I think that, you know, you're looking out for your health is a selfish thing.
Yeah, I guess.
But it's good. I mean, you would die if you didn't, or you would end up with, you know, difficulties like, you know, health problems and things.
Well, exactly. And that's kind of the crux of the matter is to exist. I think exist is actually not the right word, because like basically what I'm going for is like to thrive or to survive, to be the best that you can be. It requires doing a certain amount of things specifically and only for yourself. And those are like the things that we're talking about that we would consider basically selfish. And it is weird because it's like it feels like a disconnect in my mind, and it feels like mutually exclusive, and it feels like there's something there that doesn't make sense, because it's like, well, if I want to, like, if my overall goal is to leave the world in like a better condition than I found it, you know, if that's a marker that I say is like, okay, I had a positive effect if I was able to do this, most of that seems to be based on someone else's interpretation or external, you know, that it's like a lot of like, you know, I mean, well, like if you consider the top 10 things that people talk about when if they want to make a positive change in the world, it's a lot of times external things. You want there to be like, you know, world peace, quote unquote, or things like that. A lot of it, you know, it doesn't have to do with like internal changes or things that I want to do for myself, but it seems like that's kind of where change starts.
Yeah, well, I think kind of as a side effect of that, you will end up. Well, okay, like I have made a decision recently to just be positive all the time, like not naive, but trying to have more of a kind of can-do, so to speak, attitude, and to be to try to avoid being cynical in certain situations or nihilistic. And that was because I didn't want to cause myself to be discontent by feeling those ways.
Yep.
And I also recognize that it might be good for people around me if I did that too. And I think it was almost a byproduct of trying to make this change, because I knew it was better for me, that the people around me seemed to benefit from it a lot too, just because I was doing it.
Gotcha.
And when people talk about making positive change around them, that's, at least from what I can understand now, which this is a recent change within the last few weeks, that's really all you have to do.
Yeah.
To make positive change, you just have to be positive. And it's, you know, like there's this idea, I think, for people our age, like we think we have to be fucking Instagram famous or YouTube celebrities or someone has to make a documentary about us. And it's kind of stupid, because we're not insignificant if we don't do those things. And you can make a huge impact.
Are you saying we're not insignificant if we don't get those things done? If we're not?
Yeah, not being a household name is okay.
Are you? Oh, well, I'm done here then. I guess if that's all that. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I mean, it would be different if either of us were actually doing this because we want to be famous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just doing it because it's fun and like trying to, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And even if we didn't like have some kind of media outlet that we were using, everyone can always affect people in a good way in their just immediate circle of influence, and that's really all you have to do.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's a lot like the I think it was a Gandhi quote, right? It was just like, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah,
where it's like, yeah, it's just kind of like being what you. I mean, of course, you know, he said it much better than I can, but yeah, it's like just acting in the way that you wish others were acting. It kind of is like, I mean, that's all you really can control is your own actions. So if you just act in the way that you wish everyone would act, it kind of like starts to rub off, right?
Yeah, it's true. and some people, there are some individuals that will be negative no matter what, and you can't convince them otherwise. And those people are just like, well, I mean, I'm not here for them, I'll say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because there's nothing you can do to change that. It's like their default setting is negative.
Yep.
And I've known people like that in my life, and they're just exhausting.
Yeah.
But the thing for me is that when they act in that way, other people around me, I like get so fucking positive that they just want to strangle me. And
well, it's like,
me,
yeah.
But to me, it tells you how miserable that person is. And I don't want that for anybody, but I'm just like, well, if you're gonna be that way, I am gonna be like so positive that you won't be able to stand it, because I have to compensate for you in this situation.
Well, exactly, and that's what happens with people like that. And I'm sure it's like the same conversation would be had from the other side of it. Like I don't think it's someone that's like wanting to specifically be negative, but it's just like, oh my god, this dude is so positive, I can't take it. You know what I mean? But it's I think that it's like that happens a lot in conversational dynamics, where there's someone that has a certain amount of positive energy and someone that has a certain amount of negative energy, and there will just be some balance that is eventually struck. But until that's found, it is kind of like strange, where it's like someone's being a little over the top in whatever direction until it like kind of like rubber bands and finds its balance. But
yeah, and when the more negative individuals looking at the more positive person, it's like, oh my god, fucking Rainbow Bright over here, this fucking Care Bear.
Yep.
It's like, but I would think that in most situations there is a balance that is kind of met in there, but not always.
Yeah. Well, I'd say there should be a balance that's met. It may not ever like get to that, but I would say that if the situation stabilizes, that eventually there will be.
And it's kind of weird, because it's almost like, I'm not gonna let you bring me down, like I'm not gonna let you lift me up.
Yeah, basically, right? Yeah,
it's like, that's great. And then it's a common thing for intensely negative people to label positive people as being naive.
Yeah, I can see that.
And there's also this like sort of this almost like intellectual arrogance about it. Like, oh well, if you were smarter, you don't see how things really are. That's why you're like this. If you were as intelligent as me, you'd understand how awful everything is. Your eyes would be opened, and you'd stop being so naive, you child. And it's like, and I've definitely been guilty of that. I have been that person.
Yeah.
In numerous occasions during numerous parts of my life, and it's really hard not to be. And there's a kind of, can we agree that not all manipulation is bad?
Well, of course. Yeah. We've talked about that before.
So there's I think we have, actually a few times, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That there's times where what I've said to people is, if it's someone who's like really cynical, I'll tell them, look, it's really difficult for someone who's very intelligent not to be cynical.
Yeah.
It's like, and I get it, you're smart enough to see a lot of things that are happening, and that there's no way for you to see any kind of positives and things, because if you look at the reality of the situation, with the degree of intellect you have, you're not going to be able to look at things in a positive light.
Yeah.
And I get it. So you start off by being like, you're a fucking genius. Okay. You're goddamn right. I'm so fucking smart. And then you outline a challenge that, it's difficult to do, but, I would encourage you that, you can use the same qualities to see good stuff.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong. I mean, and for me, I think that the reason why I think to become a positive person, you need to be aware of the negatives, that you need to see how fucking awful things really are. And then it gives you the desire to be more positive.
Yeah. I could agree with that.
And that is, I mean, it's a selfish thing, I think, because, you're trying to help you feel good. But it also requires some action.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But, it's like, but also being cynical is selfish in a bad way, I think.
Cynical, selfish in a bad way.
Well, I mean, not being cynical. I mean, being negative, because most negative people are very, 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 very focused on themselves. Like, what was me?
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Everything's so bad. My life is so difficult, and blah, 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 blah. No one is special in their suffering. Bad stuff happens to all of us.
Exactly. So speaking of like action though, what is it that can be done to try to make sure that your selfishness stays in that balance where it doesn't tip over to to narcissism, basically, to where you're not caring about the well-being or the concern of others? So how do you make sure that we make sure that we stay in that balanced region where it is healthy, where it is positive, but we also keep the concern of others in mind?
I mean, I guess, for me, I would say, like, because I've never like made an effort to do so, but I kind of just do it. But it's almost like a cheat day if you're trying to eat really well and get in like wicked good shape. You can schedule a time, or you can recognize a situation in which you're going to, within reason, offer something to somebody else.
Okay.
That recognizing there's a moment where the stuff that you've done to help you can now benefit somebody else, and like knowing when that is and having some discernment in it. And the biggest thing is listening to people.
Okay.
If you because I think that to me at least, one of the paramounts of narcissism is not listening.
Yeah.
Because it says nothing about you and nothing that you have to say could possibly matter or be important to me whatsoever, and I will not waste my energy on that.
Yeah.
You need to hear what I have to say, but what you say is not important. And there's so many conversations you'll witness between people where there's two individuals and neither of them are listening, and there was no point to any of it.
Yeah. They're both just like waiting for their turn to talk. Yeah.
But yeah, just making like was it in Fight Club where they're when people think you're dying, they really listen to you. Instead of just waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah, I didn't even mean to quote Fight Club. Yeah, I did. You're right.
Yeah, but it's a good quote. And many other people, I'm sure, have said very similar things.
Yeah. We run into that a lot on this show, where it's just like so often it's like, oh yeah, hold on, there's a quote for that someone said hundreds of years ago, and it applies today, and sounds like it was written yesterday. Like,
the idea that there's like no original thought anymore, that somebody probably thought it before you.
Original Thought would be a great TikTok name. I wish my name was Original Thought.
And you could spell thought wrong.
Yeah, well, we're right. THOT.
Yeah, that's how you spell thought. Thought. Yeah. But yeah, I think that if you can just decide to have a few qualities about you that are consistently unselfish, then that's a good way to kind of fight that. And for me, listening is a really important one. And I'm not the best listener ever, but in the last couple of years, that's one of the major things that I'm proud of, is that, but it's a skill I worked on, but for the benefit of me, but then also for the benefit of others, because when people recognize and they can tell you're really listening, that's very validating to people. Especially when we live in a culture where that's not common. So yeah, or just picking out a day where you're gonna make sure you do something for somebody else. That's what the sort of cheat day thing I was talking about. That, making sure that there's one day, or even if you say every single day, I'll make a point to do one thing to the benefit of someone else.
Well, and then from my side too, it's important to recognize when that how am I trying to say this? Basically, like, I've been way too okay in the past with doing something that I probably don't necessarily want to, or may even be like getting in the way of my own goals or something, just simply because I feel like helping out the other is worth it. And it's like, that's where the problem lies for me, is like trying to find that balance of like, okay, this would be 3 positive points for this person, but 4 negative points for me, and like taking the inventory of the action and saying like, okay, does this actually balance out? Is this something that's worth doing, or something that's a good idea for me to do, or is yeah.
And I think having a healthy sense of boundaries is one thing that that can help with that. I think just knowing like what's okay and what's not, like what degree, like there's like a minor inconvenience
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you're doing something for somebody else, sometimes it might be, but it's like one thing where I don't know. uh, like for instance, if you have a job interview really early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and today is your significant other's birthday,
Okay.
and you want to do some things for that person because it's someone that matters to you,
Okay.
and you take them out for their birthday. But for whatever reason, they want to stay out till like 3 in the damn morning,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, well, I have a job interview in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's one of those situations where that person might actually attempt, if they're shitty, which obviously they are, if they're trying to make you stay out till 3 in the morning, and you have a job interview and they're aware of that.
Mm-hmm. And they're like,
but distance, it's my birthday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your significant other. That's what they sound like.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's in a nutshell. That's my type.
Yeah.
That's my type. That's my type. Yes. So then there's a point where you just have to like make just a boundary there. Like, look, this is a detriment to me now. Like, it would have been just a little bit of a sacrifice to go out and like do some stuff, as long as like we came out at a reasonable hour, but this is too much.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, well, okay, I'm going to get out of here and probably break up with you tomorrow. Because I think that if somebody in a situation like that is like that unbelievably self-centered, which is totally different, because in this case, I'm not thinking of selfishness as necessarily being self-centered. But if someone is that unbelievably self-centered, then they're probably not someone that you want to have in your life anyway.
Gotcha.
But it's just having a healthy sense of boundaries, that sometimes some things are just too much.
Okay.
And like for me, in relationships being somewhat codependent, I would say in the past, like there's plenty of times where I have given a little too much, like an unhealthy amount for a significant other. Like, and honestly, like it makes me feel good. Like I'm dating someone and I'm like, hey, what are you doing Friday? I got plans. I got to do this thing. It's like, oh, well, I really wanted to go to this, like this metal show or whatever with you, or like there's this cool thing happening at this bar. I don't know. But it feels good to me when my significant other is like, says like, oh, no, I'm doing this other thing. And like, they got plans. It's like, okay, cool. As long as there's like a healthy balance,
Yeah.
And I don't want someone that I'm dating or one of my friends to sacrifice things unnecessarily for my benefit. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that with them. Yeah. And I mean, I think you feel good when you don't let people go too far. Everybody does. Like that creates like some self-value or self-esteem, like everybody else calls it, but I like value better. And it's cool when you see other people around you having like boundaries as far as like what's okay and what's not.
Yeah.
Like there's times where if I'm doing a thing with a friend that I could do any other time, but something's going on or I'm just not up to it, and not like in a flaky kind of way, but in a way like where I'm super tired or something happened at work and I had to stay really late, like I'm going to tell my friend, like, look, I'm sorry. Like I'm feeling real crappy. Like I have absolutely no energy to do this thing that we're supposed to do today. And if it's a good friend, they'll understand that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I expect the same thing from them. Like if something's going on, like I'm not going to fault them or anything like that. I mean, and you and I do the same thing. Like if something comes up, if we're supposed to do something, like we're both very understanding.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that's cool, dude. Like, and cause I'm not gonna,
but that's a great, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm not going to waste my energy or yours by causing you stress by being a dick about something. Like if something's happening, then it's good that you told me, because that also means you're comfortable with me and that you're okay with expressing your needs to me. And if that's the case, I'm like, okay, buddy, like I can find any number of other things to do. That's cool.
But that is like a great example of one where it would be very tough for me to find that line. And, because like it almost feels like, it almost feels just like being weak or being flaky. If I wasn't like actually like sick, if I wasn't physically ill, if it was something where I could make this, but I really just didn't feel like it, it's like more often than not, I would feel like it's like, well, I made for lack of a better word, it's like I made an agreement with someone that I'm going to be somewhere at a certain point in time. I would I would make it a point to be there. But like you're saying, it may be almost detrimental to do so. That it's like if it's really overextending on your own side, maybe it is better to just make that call and say like, hey, sorry, like I'm gonna have to flake. I apologize, but this is better for me right now to do this rather than
And if you've tried everything that you can to make it, like, I mean, maybe I know that we're gonna do something and I'm feeling kind of shitty, so perhaps I take a nap.
Yeah.
And then I try to. I'm like, okay, maybe we'll see how I feel after that. I take a nap and I feel good. I'm like, okay, fuck it, we can do the thing. And I think as long as we've done everything we can to come through on our commitments, and it's good. But when people like lie or whatever, it's like that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone just doesn't feel like it, I prefer they just tell me that.
Exactly. Yes. And I think that's far too often that's what happens is like it should be a conversation of like, oh, I just don't feel like it. It turns into, what episode was it? Excuses.
Yeah. And to me, that's also a healthy kind of selfishness where if you're going to be that way, just don't hide it from anyone,
True. Yeah. True.
Just be you.
Yep.
But I think that if we count on everybody to look after their own self-interests, then we can, because like I started that wrong. I'm trying to make a point, but I'm not saying the right words.
Gotcha.
If I did something that bothered you or upset you or was difficult or painful or whatever, and I am unaware of it, then it's really important for you or the general you or whatever to express that.
Yeah.
Because if I don't know, I can't do anything about it.
Exactly.
And expressing something to somebody that is a negative or a hurtful thing, that's a form of positive kind of selfishness, because you're making sure I understand this thing was like fucked up and out of line. And then if I'm a good friend, I'll think about it and try to understand, well, oh yeah, that was fucked up. Like, I'm sorry. And then over time of me understanding stuff, that creates boundaries that I know not to cross. And then that allows me to be a better friend to somebody or a partner or even like a sibling. Like, my sisters and I have gotten into it a couple times. And that's why I think fighting is actually an important thing in every relationship, because it helps you figure out what really pisses people off about you.
Yeah, true.
And, and like I am well aware of the shit that irritates you about me. I've been a dick, and we've kind of like gotten into it enough to where I understand there's certain shit I do that are just like, just don't do that with Ty.
Gotcha, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's like, just, recognize it. But then the cool thing is that also helps me with other people, because I can be a better friend to those people too. And in some way, I'm also kind of being selfish because I'm making a friendship better that also benefits me.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of where it circles around to that. Like, I feel like we talked about this before, but it was like a debate we had in one of my business ethics classes in college, where it was like,
aren't those mutually exclusive things?
Well, that's the idea, is that it's like you never do anything that is 100% altruistic. There's always like some sort of selfish motive to anything you're doing. And like you were saying, like even in a situation where like I'm doing this to 100% help this person, it's like, well, no, you can always look at it from the side of like, oh, well, if you help this person, that's going to help you by making the friendship better for you. So there's always like a selfish side you can see to something like that. But yeah, it's interesting.
And also the selfish side of it doesn't necessarily make it bad.
Well,
like
exactly.
An bad thing.
No, of course not. No, I think that's what we will. Yeah.
And it's like, if you spend your time getting stronger, like lifting weights and things like that, and like working on your physical strength, then it's possible that you can use that to lift a car off of somebody. or you can use that to help somebody climb over something in a dangerous situation. You have the strength to reach down and grab them and help them to safety. And it's the same thing for me, like because like with self-defense stuff, like that's just as much for me as it is for the people around me. In fact, it's more important to me to defend people around me than it is just for myself. I mean, obviously I'm going to look out for me. And I mean, it's the same thing with firearms. I mean, like, I don't ever want to ever hurt anybody with a gun. Like, that's the last thing in the world I ever want to do. I don't want to have to live with that shit. And, you know, lucky me, I like shooting at pieces of paper, but it's the same thing there. It's not because I'm some kind of like cowboy lunatic, or because it's necessarily to protect me. In many other cases, it's because I don't want to let someone hurt anybody else. And those are things that I work on myself that I get better at, but I can always use those abilities to help somebody else in addition to myself.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, it seems like a sense of duty that you see, that it's like, okay, it's I need to do this, or it's right for me to do this.
Yeah. Or even the person that wants to get good at like working on cars or fixing things, they can always use that ability to help someone else.
Exactly.
Or, you know, like someone that's good with numbers or whatever. It's like, you know, and there's like kind of a symbiosis about all of it that, you know, as you increase skills in yourself, you can use those skills to help others. And if other people increase skills in themselves, then they can help others. And that includes you.
Yeah. We all become better together.
Yeah. Kind of like what this podcast has been about for at least the majority of the last year.
Exactly. Yeah.
Getting better together. A bunch of novice dipshits that don't know what the fuck they're doing, trying to figure out what the fuck they're doing together.
Trying. Yeah. At least trying. Yeah. Which I think we've made some headway in the past year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, this is like, oh no, this isn't our year. Next week would be our year. That's right.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, like, and this is a good thing to start to wrap things up with, because this is what we've been talking about, is developing yourself and being a better you, and all kinds of ways and all kinds of aspects. Just trying to be the best version of yourself, which to me is the truest version of oneself, is the best one. And yeah, I mean, it's been cool this year. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna miss this content, but I'm happy to move on to the new thing.
Me too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, this is some difficult shit to talk about, especially when it's difficult to apply all the things to yourself, you know.
Yeah.
More of it has been to, you know, allow a benefit for other people, but at the same time, you know, learning the things that we've learned and talking about the subjects we have has helped, you know, me to figure out some things. And honestly, I'll probably go back and listen to some of our episodes for my own benefit.
Yeah, definitely.
On occasion. But yeah, I didn't think this was going to be a lengthy one today. So
yeah.
But I got a really good quote for this one. And this will probably be the last one I do, because quotes won't really fit so much with our new show, our new format.
Sure. Well, we still have one episode left.
Yeah.
Of just like the wrap up. Yeah. Which I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there'd be a quote for that or not. I don't know.
Do we talk about what the last one's going to be this year, or do you want to just
we'll just do it next week, you know?
Okay. It's going to be weird. So
it will be a little weird.
If you have been listening to us for a while, the next one's going to be a lot of fun, and it is going to be very difficult and very uncomfortable for both of us, especially me, because I feel like between the two of us, like, I have a specific personality trait that will make it more difficult for me in particular. Yeah, without saying too much. But gotcha, you know, it's just the idea that I think that people should never be afraid to be better, and they should never be afraid, because standing up for yourself is in some ways selfish too.
Yeah.
Like, people should never be afraid to stand up for themselves, and I'm just happy that we have at least had a small opportunity to maybe be a tool in helping somebody be the best type of person that they can be.
I hope so. Yeah. I hope
And
so.
I still suck in lots of ways, and it's always a work in progress. There is no destination.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there is no
Keep
like
on going.
we're not Frieza. We will never reach our final form.
But is that really his final form?
Is Frieza really a he?
Oh, yeah. I guess Frieza's more of a they.
I always thought Frieza was a woman for the longest time.
Frieza's kind of androgynous. I cannot believe we're talking about Dragon Ball Z after right before this I told you how much I fucking hate that show.
Frieza's like Ashiok.
Oh,
it may just be a race that there is no gender. Who knows? But yeah. So what is your quote for this week? The penultimate episode of the first year.
The penultimate quote is Oscar Wilde, actually.
Ooh.
Selfishness is not living as one wishes to live. It is asking others to live as one wishes to live.
We have reached the end of another episode of the Metacast podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and you enjoyed the conversation, please hit the like button, subscribe to keep up to date, and comment below and tell us your opinions on the idea of being selfish. If you're interested in further taking part in the conversation or even joining us as a guest on a future episode, join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. And we will be live next week, Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you have a great week.